Alrighty then. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Radio Free Eskipakathiki. Boy, that didn't work. I'm Geoff Sebesta. I'm the host. I'm here with my co-host, Charles Julian Altendorf. And we have a special guest today because we are doing the first gubernatorial forum for the Democratic side at all. And we're here in the studio with Ms. Peppy Martin. Hello, Ms. Martin.
Good morning, or good afternoon at this point.
Oh, yeah, just barely. All right, you've got an eye for detail. That's important in a governor. So, and we are awaiting the other two candidates for governor, both Geoff Young and Andy Beshear. We expect one of them more confidently than the other, but we will certainly see whether Andy makes an appearance. He's certainly welcome. I mean, this is a primary, right? You're supposed to
equal airtime and everything. That's what the FCC says. Although they give more equal airtime to certain people than others.
You take that back about Bill Maher. I'm gonna be honest. This is actually, in the 5 years that I've worked with him, the first time Geoff Young has ever been late for anything, ever. Yeah. So we're a little surprised that he's not here.
We might have to send out a search party in a little while.
I'm thinking the Ukrainians finally got him.
Yeah, well.
Okay,
it was bound to happen.
I'm going to end up announcing my retirement from politics at the end of the show. As you all know, my participation in Kentucky politics is contingent on the non-mysterious death of Geoff Young, and the day that he dies of a heart attack or whatever is the day I retire. I always laugh. I'm also perfectly serious. So, in any case, here we are in Kentucky, and it is 2023, and you may be surprised to hear, but there is actually a gubernatorial primary going on. There's an election. We are trying to figure out who the next governor is going to be, and there are three people running on the Democratic side. They are Geoff Young, Peppy Martin, and Andy Beshear. And like most Democratic primaries, we have forums to discuss things with the candidates, right? Supposed to be more forums.
Right, yeah. I mean, I don't know. Did we ever find out if KET's are they gonna pull a last minute allow people to talk again?
No.
Kind of deal?
No, not only is KET not going to do that, Peppy, feel free to jump in at any moment.
Feel free to interrupt
friends.
us. We're kind of crazy.
Yeah, we just go all over the place. And actually, I see Geoff through the window, so I guess there's some traffic. No big deal there at all. Anyway, no, Stephen Meredith. Do you have an opinion about Stephen Meredith?
No, I don't. You have to remind me who that is.
No, the guy from KET who's actually really good is Todd Piccarelli, and there's a lawyer who's the real problem.
I remember Todd Piccarelli.
They've set some new rules,
which
are not. I don't think they're legal.
They aren't.
Well, that's the thing. We always find out they're illegal.
It could be because the board is stacked.
It is
probably.
The governor gets the chance to appoint some of the board, but in '99, when I was the Republican nominee for governor, we were limited for one reason or another to one KET experience, both in the primary and again in the fall. But at least they were open to all the candidates. Yeah, and indeed, there were 5 of us in the general election.
Yeah. Do you want to know the whole story? What? This is actually where we get tied in, because this is where this is actually one of the things that we've been working on.
Had a contact with KET since I ran.
In 2014, wasn't it? 2014, a libertarian ran for. You help me here. What was his name?
Was that wasn't Hicks? That was somebody else that year. No, you're talking about Ken when he ran.
No, it wasn't Ken either.
Okay.
It was, but I'm almost positive it was 2014.
Yeah.
In 2014, a libertarian ran for a large position, and somebody at KET got the bright idea to put these donation limits on participation in the debates.
Oh, I think that was Patterson.
Patterson, thank you. His name was on the tip of my tongue. So they tried this, and everybody disliked it, and they didn't try it again. But then our friend Mr. Young appeared, and they started trying to figure out how to keep him out of the debates.
Yeah.
Hey, man.
Cool deal.
Yeah.
Do I need to move the microphone over? Do we have?
Nah, he's a pro. He can figure it out. Wait.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, there's not really a microphone for
No.
you, Jeff.
Yep.
Here, let's see if we can fix that.
Let's-
Hello,
we'll add
Radio
that one.
Land.
We'll add another microphone in a second, guys.
Use your imaginations. Anyway, Geoff Young has now joined us in the studio, which means that we have 2/3 of the Democratic slate for governor. I'm sure Andy Bashir is just behind you, looking for his parking space right now.
Yeah, I'm sure he's coming in. But yeah, so they're originally trying to exclude us, of course, because we just steal votes. That's all we do at the Libertarian Party.
Yeah, I'm Peppy, Jeff Peppy. You all met, right?
Yeah, we met the other day.
So we were talking about how this is the first time you've ever been late for anything, which is actually more impressive than never being late for anything ever. I don't.
Decided to shave.
Oh, that's
Oh,
important
my
for
goodness.
radio. Yeah, it really.
Well, I've always been told I have the face for radio, but
Okay. Well, we were sitting here telling Peppy about the mess with KET, which really is not why people are listening, right? I would assume they're listening to listen to you two. So, should we continue with KET or?
Well, I think we could each of us make a comment about KET. KET is public. It's a publicly supported organization under the FCC, and it would seem that the FCC is really ultimately the one to be blamed because they're not watching what their licensees are doing, and for a public election. I just feel that all the candidates should be invited.
Yeah.
Certainly, there's only a percentage of the viewership that watches any of those KET debates or comments. Probably of all the voters, it's 20% of the voters for the primary, I would say, and the voters are probably not going to. Though I think perhaps this election there will be more voters in the primary than in the past elections.
You think this is going to be a high turnout?
Yes, I do, on both sides.
Really?
I think there's a lot of interest.
it
Gosh,
does
I
seem
hope
like
so.
a battle royale out there. Although, interestingly, 10% of the voters now aren't registered Republican or Democrat, so they can't vote in the primary now.
Huh. I have seen nothing but crickets on the Democratic side. I've seen no awareness that there's even a primary at all.
Well, apparently we're raising awareness today.
Yeah, well, the Lyft drivers and the Uber drivers of Lexington are going to know.
Well, I did invite some people to listen, so
Yeah.
I shared about my appearance today in low circles. So
No, the nice thing about all this is that it's recorded and it goes on YouTube.
Yep.
And then anybody that wants to can listen. And honestly, like in last year, when we ended up being the only debate between the representative candidates, if people wanted to hear it, that's where they came in. Anyway, we're going to be doing this show on Thursdays all the way until the primary. So you are always welcome to come by anytime and have the show all to yourself, or to just sit in and listen to whatever we're talking about that week, or whatever you like. You're always welcome.
And I have to say, it's really great to have the airtime, and I think it's cool that we've gotten lucky to have the airtime, and but this is really how politics should be done, in my opinion. There should be airtime for people.
Well, speaking of which, you and I are talking, and the governor candidates are not talking. and
Let's let them talk a little.
Yes.
I guess we should let them give their opening salvos or talk about KET if they want to.
That's right. Absolute silence from now on.
Jeff,
not another word.
You have some comments on KET, Geoff Young?
Well, for many years, KET has been rigging elections against third-party candidates, such as the Libertarians, not just in Kentucky. Public TV stations all over the country have been excluding third-party candidates who have made it onto the ballot, and it's much harder for a third-party candidate to get on the ballot. You need 5,000 signatures in Kentucky instead of 2 if you're a Republican or a Democrat. So it was already rigged by state law, the General Assembly, against third parties. And for years, public TV stations, which are agencies of the state government, at least in Kentucky, And then you have NPR, which is a public station, rigging it against third parties. But starting in 2019, the governor's race, where I was one of 4 Democrats running, they rigged that primary too. By requiring, you to have raised or spent vast amounts of money even to appear on their stage. That's discriminatory against regular people, poor candidates, non-incumbents, third parties, who just don't have it, don't have that much money usually. So that's KET. I've sued them a couple times. I'm not an attorney, but it may happen again.
You're doing the Lord's work.
Well, and the pure irony of that, of course, is KET at NPR would tell you they pride themselves on being an inclusive environment.
Yeah.
And they're clearly not. They clearly picked their sides. Although I do have to give NPR credit. They did allow our presidential candidate an interview last cycle. Now, they put it on the Saturday block in the morning, so I don't know how many people actually listened to that. And then, of course, they asked her some ridiculous questions, as they would. But, it's hilarious. They say they're inclusive. They say they allow people on there, and then they slap rules like, you got to spend $100,000 to get on here. And then when you get the $100,000, like we did, again, in the Senate race last time, then all of a sudden we don't get to hear from old Mitchie. Yeah. He does his best to kick other people off the air, and then he doesn't show up to talk to anybody else. So,
right. I mean, what KET has done to the Kentucky election cycle in the last 3-4 years has left practically everyone outraged. I mean, people are furious. They completely shut down the primary last year because of this dumb contribution limit thing. That's why, what was that absolute farce that they had at the very end where they tried to have a primary debate, but there was the only, of the 6 races, there were only 2 where both people made it through the contribution limit, and in both those races, the Republican chose to not appear.
Yeah. I think that was in the congressional ones.
Yeah, and I mean, it was a brutal joke. And so when Stephen Meredith is a bit of a mixed bag from my point of view. But when he put forward this bill to do something about the board of KET, and because at the moment, as much as you all are obviously welcome to your own opinions here, but I really like Rocky Adkins as a person. I like his wife. I like Andy Bashir as a person. I don't. But these people should not be putting their family members on the KET board. They're pleasant people, but you can't do this.
Well, and that's the thing that I would like. I probably would like to hear both of y'all's opinion on this as gubernatorial candidates. Is in a Harvard study in, I think it was 2013, we came in as the #1 state in legalized corruption, not meaning illegal corruption, meaning that there's stuff on the books legally that people do that's corrupt in our government. And what do you all think is really the path forward to changing that atmosphere? Because this points back to it exactly, right? We got family members on the public television board blocking candidates from speaking on the public television, So
Yeah.
I guess we'll turn to Peppy first.
Bevin, of course, tried to change all the boards, and that was a disaster, I think, too.
Right, yeah.
So there's a happy medium as far as the overlap and the continuity within the boards. But I agree. I think it's unnecessary with all the 4.5 million people we have in this state to have family members run the boards on whether it's the tourism board or the KET or what board it is. That ought to be
I don't know how to contact them right now, and I'm doing a show. So
denied.
back in a couple hours, that would be really nice.
Jeff, you want to respond to that too?
Yeah, let me just give my basic couple of issues in my campaign for governor this year in the Democratic primary. One issue is that I believe Andy Beshear has totally mismanaged the COVID-19 response from 2020 until today. He has simply believed everything Dr. Fauci and the federal health authorities have said. He has failed to ask any of his staff to investigate whether those recommendations are based on science or politics, democratic politics. And he's simply implemented all kinds of restrictive measures and encouraged every Kentuckian, as far as I can tell, no matter how young, to get jabbed by experimental, not well-tested mRNA, quote, vaccines. I don't think they even are vaccines, but we'll call them vaccines because everyone else does.
They changed the definition of vaccine.
They changed it.
I did
Yeah.
hear
They
that.
really did.
Yeah.
No, they did.
And so he has cost the lives and health of thousands of Kentuckians through his arrogant, blind acceptance of the political line coming out of Washington on COVID-19. If I had been governor in, January of 2020 when Andy was sworn in, if I had been the person being sworn in, I would never have recommended that anyone get any of these mRNA vaccines because they're completely new, and there hadn't been 10 years of testing on their safety. In fact, I would have asked the Kentucky General Assembly to make it illegal to jab anyone in Kentucky with an mRNA vaccine. What would I have done? I would have encouraged treatment of COVID or whatever it was, symptoms, and there are well-known treatments for it that we can get into in a minute. But
Before we do, though, I think it's totally fair to give Ms. Martin a...
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I will comment on that.
Please
do.
I don't think, unfortunately, from the way people voted across the country a year ago, that is the issue going forward, even in this race. I do think that there was a lot of money that was made by the folks that were in charge, and it'll be interesting someday to tally up how much Andy has made out of towing the Washington line and administering without supervision any of the COVID funds. I'm Peppy Martin again. I'm running for governor. You may recognize my name from '99 when I was the Republican nominee for governor, and Mitch McConnell and Mafia kept me from winning. So I joined my friends in the Democratic Party.
And you're welcome. You're very welcome.
I was born a Democrat. I used to say I was born a Chandler Democrat, but there are a lot of Democrats who remind me that they never voted for a Chandler. So, but I consider Ben a friend of mine, and Happy Chandler was a friend of my father's. Actually, Happy's wife was more of a friend of my father's. But I grew up in Louisville, and in the days when I first got involved in Kentucky statewide politics, I was the only young woman involved. I was 15, and my mother had to drive me to and from the statewide headquarters downtown Louisville because I couldn't get there otherwise. And both parties had to have their statewide headquarters within walking distance of the Courier Journal. Things have changed.
Yes.
But I submit that the bigger change, not only in the change in media ownership and success, has really been the cell phone.
Yeah.
From when I first got into politics, because every politician who was running statewide had to drag himself back into the headquarters sometime at night and return phone calls for half the night because they were tied to the landlines. And so things have maybe progressed, but the cell phone has certainly changed not only politics in Kentucky, but business and how business is done these days. But at any rate, I think that they're getting back to Geoff's point, and I didn't mean to
We wander.
it's
You're
perfectly
very
acceptable.
funny.
interrupt
wander.
your thoughts.
If you need to come back next week to get to
You
it's fine.
named two thoughts, and the one was COVID. And actually, I think Americans have just turned their back on that and walked on. And I find it interesting to see how many people are still wearing masks, especially around Louisville. But I think there was a huge money arrangement which has yet to be ciphered.
Yeah, I think you're right there.
Well,
Yeah.
I absolutely agree with
I've
that.
recommended, this is Geoff Young responding, I've recommended that Pfizer and Moderna corporations have their corporate charters revoked. That's known as the corporate death penalty. Nobody gets killed in the corporation.
No, if corporations are people.
They can go to prison, though, and I think that their falsification of safety test data for the last 3 years is unquestionably criminal. Pfizer's original contract was with the Defense Department for some interesting reason, and they have been violating their contract because the vaccines were not safe and effective, and they knew this from the very beginning, 2020.
Well, they'd never done any testing, so how could they have known?
Well, yeah, right.
No,
They set things up
Yeah.
so that they, maybe met the letter of the contract by not doing any testing.
No.
But then they,
No, they didn't. They didn't. And that's one of the things that makes me so frustrated about all this. There is no such thing as a zero-cost public health intervention. And I apologize because these guys have heard me say it before, but there's people walking by that window right now that if you gave them the wrong trail mix, they would die, right? There's people out there that will die if they touch cinnamon. There's no such
pine
thing.
nuts or something.
Yeah, there's no such thing. There's people who are allergic to their own skin. There's no such thing as a matrix in which a vaccine can be, or a potion, as you call it, can be delivered. That is not. There are people that are immune to horseshoe crab serum. I mean, they're allergic to the serum that the vaccine is in. There's no way. There was never any way that there was going to be no cost for this. It was not possible.
Better be careful. You get the libertarian too fired up here.
We're talking too much. And
But you're saying exactly all the points we made as a party back then, and it's like you said, it's frustrating because you feel like you're not even heard. And back to Peppy's point, people are making money off this is the really annoying thing, and it's happening.
And they're not sharing.
Well, I don't even want it shared. I'd want them to just stop trying to make money off it. I mean, you can't claim the moral high ground and then take the money from everybody. That's
Yeah. And I mean, Ms. Martin, I'm going to just disagree with one thing you said, which is I think that America and Kentucky is doing everything they can and has been doing everything they can to change the subject and to not think about this. But I personally lost a lot of family to the quarantine, not to COVID, to the quarantine and to the overreactions around quarantine. And I've discovered in myself a deep well of anger. I'm very, very, very angry that I didn't get the last 3 or 4 years that I should have had with my grandmother. I'm very angry that so many people in my family died.
Well, hey, Sebesta,
yeah.
the Atlantic said that you're supposed to, what was that? You're supposed to live and let live or something? What they say in there?
I'll forgive her, but I haven't forgiven Fauci for AIDS yet.
The Atlantic said you're supposed to just let it go, man.
Okay, speaking of let it go, Ms. Martin, would you like to respond?
Yeah, let's we
are
added our
terrible about
commentary.
this.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, and we haven't even heard the second point that Geoff said he's running on.
Terrible.
Absolutely
I'll
garbage
sneak
host. We
my
should be
two-
fired.
I'll
Go
s-
ahead.
I'll sneak my two main issues in, and then
Yeah,
we
good,
can discuss them later.
Great. 1, 2, 3, and 4 back here.
That's fine. People in Kentucky are very excited, I think, about this election, and governor's races in general have been, and I guess really will continue. We'll see how this vote turns out, but governor's races are pocketbook races. People want to know what you can do for them, for governor. And most people are giving enough in Kentucky that they also want to know what you're going to do for the state in general. And so my issues are those that I think people have told me that they want. They want to legalize marijuana, and they want casino gambling. Mm-hmm. They want casino gambling, and they're happy to understand that I want it run by the state and not to anybody to give it to a corporation. If we wanted to give it to a corporation, we ought to have a worldwide auction and just auction the privilege off through Christie's or Sotheby's, and we might end up with a high bidder from Africa or Asia or anywhere in the world.
Las Vegas.
Yeah.
Make the Jockey Club work for it.
And let the state take its $30 billion, and that's B with a billion, from the auction, and be happy to then tax it. But for Andy Beshear to want to give it to the tracks, I'm sorry, I come from Louisville. We have a major track in Louisville, and they want the gambling. I don't want to give it to them. It isn't because I don't think the tracks do a fine job. And being in the promotion and advertising business, I have admired all of the great promotions that I see Churchill Downs doing. But as far as the good of the state of Kentucky, we need the income produced by legalizing marijuana and by having, now there'll be expenses, of course, but the gross net income of the gross income of the casino gambling at 100% and not at 15 or 30 or whatever the tax might be. I just cannot fathom that anybody would want to give it away. It is, after all, and I made this little historical case, and I feel confident that I can go to our Supreme Court and persuade them, if need be, that there is historical evidence that gaming and smoking as are part of our heritage. And Geoff gets a kick out of this because he heard me.
This is my favorite part of your stump speech by far.
Yeah, heard me speak. Well, my background is history, and I know that I'm not the Kentucky historian that some are who may hear this program. I don't intend to be. I have studied mainly European and American Revolutionary history. But it all ties in together, and that is that when the French traders, the trading companies, sent Frenchmen over here to make money, and they came in the 1600s to these parts that we call Kentucky. And when they got here, they they brought with them the customs that they had in France, that they had all over Europe, that they had in the British Isles. And that was that people drank, mainly they drank something. It may not have been Kentucky bourbon as we know it today, but they drank a type of mead or whiskey that because the water was so poisoned, the water and there wasn't any fresh drinking water. And so they were used to drinking some sort of alcoholic beverage. They smoked, of course, and they played cards. They played cards and they played dice. Dice, I didn't say this because there wasn't time, but dice dates back to 3000 BC in Egypt. And so certainly, and cards were printed both in Paris and in London. And so the French had their cards. And the interesting thing that I did not mention because I didn't have time the other day was that the 4 tribes of Native Americans who were in these parts in at least 6 months of the year hunting, along with the French, there were 4 tribes. There were the Cherokee in southeastern Kentucky, the Shawnee in central and northeastern Kentucky, the Chickasaw in western part of what we call Kentucky, and the Yuchi, which I'd never heard that name. Mm-hmm. I don't even know if I pronounce it right. The Yuchi in eastern Kentucky. And when they saw the French playing cards, they painted their own. They did, and I'm fascinated. I don't know what they painted them on.
I would love to see that. Yeah.
I know it. I would think it was hide.
Bark or hide,
bark or hide. It would have had to be. But I have a wonderful picture to show our new Supreme Court Justice of the Native Americans with a little dog. I knew, of course, they had ponies, and I'm not sure where the ponies came from, whether it was from the Spanish, from the 1500s, or what. But we all know they hunted on ponies, but I didn't know they had little dogs.
Yeah.
And I have this wonderful picture, and no telling what I might find over in the museum in Frankfurt, of the historical museum over there. But the point being that the French and the Native Americans were playing cards, and you play for value, whether it was bits of gold or bone or a knife or what. And so then when Boone came along to survey, he was a surveyor. And when he came into these parts, and then he came first, and then he went back to Virginia area and brought the Scots and the Irish and the English with him over here to these parts. They all had cards printed in London and dice.
Yeah.
So you see, the gaming and the smoking and the whiskey is all part of our Kentucky heritage.
Dueling, too.
Dueling. Well, probably so. And they might have dueled over some of the losses in the gaming. Who knows?
I assume so, yeah. Geoff, she's getting my vote, dude. Say something fast.
All right. I don't know if that was both your issues, Peppy, but if it wasn't, we can go back.
Yeah, the marijuana, legalizing
okay.
marijuana
All
and casino gambling. I'll come back to those and why they're important to our future.
Okay.
Oh, that was fantastic. That was really great.
I really have 2 more issues. One is corruption.
Mm-hmm.
I've been running for various offices since 2014. No, 2012. I ran for the Kentucky State House against Stan Lee, a very conservative, entrenched
Was 2012 the green
Republican.
year?
I was a Green in 2012.
Yeah.
Then I switched back to my lifelong party, ran for the U.S. House in the 6th District here in central Kentucky in 2014, 2016, 2018, 2020 as a Republican, And 2022, last year, I actually won the Democratic primary for the first time.
That was a good time.
Yeah, congratulations.
Well,
That was
thank
quite
you.
the party.
Yeah, rather
We had
amazing.
a really good time.
We had a lot of fun with that.
And I also ran for governor. This is my third run for governor.
2015,
2015, my Democratic opponent in the primary was Jack Conway. And 2019, I had three opponents: Andy Bashir, who went all the way, Adam Edlin, and Rocky Adkins. So this is my third run for governor, and I'm a Democrat this year, and 2023. My second issue is that both. I learned from direct personal experience that both the RPK, the Republican Party of Kentucky, and the KDP, Kentucky Democratic Party, are 100% corrupt. They violate the law whenever they feel like it, and I'm speaking mainly of rigging their own primaries. We have a statute in Kentucky that says that the leadership of any party that has a primary may not rig it, essentially. I'm translating it from legalese into plain English. The leadership may not control or influence who their nominee will be for any election where there's a primary.
And that wait, that's a statute, right?
It's a statute. Yeah, it's KRS 118.105, Section 1. And they do it all the time.
Yeah. No, they're doing it right now.
And they're doing it right now.
I did.
Exactly right.
Young and I are friends and hang out all the time, and I have a bad habit of interrupting him. But you all understand what you've done to our poor Democratic Party, right? Like, that's okay. First, I want to say something about what happened in Montgomery County. We were in Montgomery County 2 weeks ago, last week.
Please tell me this. I'll be quite interested.
Well, somebody started talking about real Democrats and arguing about who was a real Democrat and who wasn't a real Democrat.
Ooh.
Obviously staring at Geoff, but everybody else in the room was sort of going like, well, I sort of used to be a Republican too.
Oh, yeah. He asked me, how many times have you switched parties?
Yeah. And I'm sitting there going,
And I answered it. I thought it was a serious question. It turns out it was not.
He thought it was a gotcha.
It was
and
a
meanwhile,
rhetorical question.
the chair of the Montgomery County is sitting over there going like, yeah, I did used to be a Republican a few years ago. And I mean, I'm sitting looking around the room, it's like, I've been a Democrat since I was 4. Since I was 4. I'm probably the only person in this room who has always been a Democrat. And my interest in, are you a real Democrat? -0, nothing. I could not care less if somebody used to be part of a different. I think it's good. I think it's really wonderful that you all are switching parties and trying different ways, because this is about Kentucky. Anyway, so the poor Democratic Party is so threatened by you two terrible people, you awful, awful boomers, and what you have done to Andy Bashir, that they are, I'm not exaggerating, going around trying to get the county parties to endorse Andy Bashir during the primary.
Yeah, that's not legal.
Or necessary, or
That's
sane.
a loaded gun.
Yeah.
It's against the bylaws of the KDP as far as I know.
Oh, yes.
But they may have changed them.
No, they changed it to make it worse. It's against the new bylaws and the old bylaws and the law and all common sense and all sanity.
All right.
That is what you call power.
Well, and the
Yeah.
funniest
I
part
mean,
about that is if we went and did something similar at the Libertarian Party, they'd hammer us in court.
Yeah.
Like, they'd come after us, man. Like, we have to have our calls open, even though, people don't actually come. But we have it listed publicly, right?
Yeah.
We have publicly take nominations, right? We
Yeah.
have to go out and collect signatures, and we publicly do that. But, hey, they could just go around behind the scenes here.
Yeah. You were going to say?
Well, I mean, that happened. I saw it. And you just have to be better than that.
Yeah.
You do. I mean, I saw it and witnessed it and experienced it in '99. I came from the grassroots Republican Party. Grew up in Louisville, again, with the state headquarters there. Louis Nunn, who became, of course, governor, was really better known as being a statewide campaign manager. He had managed Cooper and Morton and everybody who ran statewide until he decided that it was his turn. But when none, in those days, you could only serve 4 years as governor.
Mm-hmm.
And after none, then McConnell came along. And well, it was the 67 primary for governor on the Republican side that really split the Republican Party. It was between Louis Nunn, who had run in 63 and lost by a small margin to Breathitt, and came back in 67, and Marlowe Cook, who was the county judge of Jefferson County. I was with Nunn, and McConnell was with Cook.
Mm-hmm.
We both had grown up in, McConnell is not from Kentucky, but he went to school there.
McConnell was around in 67?
Oh, yeah.
Was he county judge executive then? Or
No.
No.
No,
He's been
but
around a long time,
he
my friend.
was a lawyer then, I think.
Oh, so you
And-
knew him before he was even CJE?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I knew McConnell. Anyway, he worked with Cook,
Mm-hmm.
and I had helped in 63 and again in 67, Nunn. And there was a big primary in 67, and Nunn won. And it really has split the Republican Party.
Mm-hmm.
And it remains split between the grassroots, whom McConnell loathes, and and his people.
Yeah.
And he has worked diligently to eradicate the grassroots.
Yeah.
Well, they became libertarian, some of them.
Yeah,
Some of them-
I mean, I will openly admit that some have joined our ranks from that group, but you
Yeah.
know,
Also, the Tea Party.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
We have a pretty big Tea Party in Kentucky.
Really nice people. Really, really
I get
nice
along
people.
with them much better than the McConnell
Oh, I
supermajority.
don't. They pushed me around here
Did
in
they?
Lexington.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Oh
Yeah.
no! Oh
What
man,
happened?
we've done
Yeah,
stepped
yeah.
in it now.
Yeah.
No, tell us. We'll talk to the management.
I've never been actually shoved before. I ran into a bunch of them from northern Kentucky.
Uh-huh.
And I had come to hear Buchanan when he was
okay.
running.
Pat Buchanan or?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Was running for president. And he came here, and I introduced him. And I was pushed and shoved by a bunch of people from up in northern Kentucky. And they were the ones who finally shoved Bunning out of being Senate.
Wow.
Yeah, Bunning was the only one in 99 who endorsed me. And it was late at that. But, I mean, he did, but it was too late by then. No other elected official anywhere. And even the County Judges Association, which you talk about rigged.
Yeah.
I won the primary, and I got a letter from them inviting me to address the association in June.
Mm-hmm.
And then they wrote back and said, "We're sorry you can't come."
It,
So this year, I get a notice from them, as you did, I'm sure, Geoff, from the county judge executives, and it said, "Oh, we'd love for you to come over to Lexington to our meeting. It'll cost you $1,000."
No, I never got that.
well, that's
And I
better
wrote
than what you
back,
gated
and I
us.
said, "I think
Yeah.
you all reneged on letting me speak to your crowd in 99. I think you owe me one."
You have $1,000 credit with them.
Yeah, that's great.
Well, at least to speak. I didn't
Yeah.
have to eat lunch with them.
Better be a good lunch.
And I never heard from him again.
Yeah.
No. Well, hell, for $1,000, I can go around and see every county judge in the state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, walk into his office if they're there. I tried in 99. I did go to every county in the state and every courthouse. And I was
sorry.
surprised that what interesting hours a lot of them keep. They don't keep any.
Yeah, it's we
really
have
hit or miss,
120
yes.
little
Yes.
kingdoms in this state. Well, with CJE, I guess we only have 118. I have to ask because did you know Thelma Stovall?
Yeah.
What did you think of her?
I thought she was certainly a pioneer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm from Jefferson County, but I had a farm in Hart County from which I ran in '99, and they have a county park in Mumfordville dedicated to her. It's the Thelma Stovall Park, because she is one. I don't have my list with me, but I think she is one of 5 lieutenant governors, and she was the first, I think, a woman lieutenant governor. And one was appointed, Crit Llewellyn, but the others have been elected.
Oh,
But
God, she fought her way there.
She had, when she won, she ran separately. Now, of course, you run as a ticket.
Right.
Not even anymore. Actually, they changed that.
Well, the nominee for governor gets
chooses.
to choose.
Right, but
Yeah.
they don't run separately for
No.
lieutenant governor.
Right.
Yeah, you don't
they
really
did.
run at all for LG anymore.
Right, and so she really pushed her way in as the first independently elected lieutenant governor. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
I knew her. And not well. She was, a little
Yeah.
bit before my time. But
She's sort of a hero of mine. I don't know much about her, but everything I've seen about her, I was just like,
didn't
oh.
she
Yeah.
hold some of that? Didn't she and Francis Jones Mills flip back and forth a lot between Secretary of State and Treasury?
I think
I think
so,
they
yeah.
were the two,
That sounds right.
what I would call old war horses. I mean,
Well,
they
the
were
problem with me
around
is if
for-
you tell me too much, I'll start looking it up on Google, and then we'll just talk about that.
No, but I mean, they knew where everything was buried.
Yeah.
They knew where everything
That was also my theory about Bevan, by the way.
But Thelma was quite a gal. But I know when I first ran for the legislature, a Republican primary in the early '80s, and I was invited by Francis Jones Mills, who was Secretary of State at the time, to come up to the Capitol, and she indeed had a hat. And you pulled, as if you were throwing your name, you pulled your name out of the hat to see location on the ballot. Was what it was for.
That's great.
And I thought that was wonderful.
They should bring that back. I want that hat.
Yeah, the hat.
Unfortunately, our current Secretary of State isn't quite as personable.
No way. You're not saying that.
He didn't.
He's a decent drummer.
Yeah.
Well, this is interesting, but I'd like to get back to
Sure.
corruption
Yeah.
for a minute.
That's totally fair. That's totally fair.
Elaborate a little bit.
But gosh darn it, this is so interesting too. So yeah, let's just stick on corruption. Okay, no. Before we do corruption, this is how we're going to do it.
All right.
Jeff, say something nice about the Kentucky state government.
Oh, the executive branch,
Uh-huh.
except at the very highest level, is quite good.
Yeah.
I think of all the branches, that's the least corrupt. You hear a lot of bad things said about state workers, but I worked in state government in Frankfurt in the Energy and Environment Cabinet for 15 years, and I have a good opinion of the large majority of state workers. There's also a executive branch ethics commission, which does a fair job. When you get to the legislature, I would say a bit more corrupt.
Well, we'll save that because after you both say something nice
okay.
about the Kentucky government,
All right.
we're all on. The way you discuss corruption is confusing to people.
Yeah.
As you've right, like when you say that a primary is being rigged,
Yeah.
people imagine a smoke-filled room where, like, fat guys are passing cigars back and
Well,
forth.
that probably happened.
Yeah, it does. But what we're really specifically referring to is things like KET putting this weird, constantly changing donation limit, or
Right.
or the
Or the parties giving the incumbent or their favorite candidate a tremendous amount of in-kind value contributions.
or openly stepping on candidacies, as just happened to me, which happened to me for no reason other than I knew you.
Yeah, you were running for
I was one
a
of the
vacancy in the state senate.
I was one of the people considered for the nomination to be the Democratic nominee for
Yeah.
the state Senate
Right.
special election, at which they moved heaven and earth to stop. I'm honestly so proud of this, and I swear to God we're going to get to this in just a second, but I'm going to tell the story real fast. So I told everybody. I told the Tommy Adams and the Chuck Eddies and everybody. I was like, look.
He even told me.
Yeah, I was like, look, you got to find a better candidate than me, or you're going to be stuck with me. And they never. Well, they found another candidate, but the way they did it was so over the top, ridiculously corrupt that I just was laughing, because I don't really want to be a state senator. I mostly put my name in the hat to force them to find a better candidate. And I was very honest about that. I was very clear about that from the beginning. And the lengths that they went to stop people who know Geoff Young from being even nominated were stunning. Did you notice, like...
Yeah, I mean, well, it come even back when I was on the trail, sort of, I'll admit, I in my private time, I can't obviously endorse a Democrat as a libertarian, but I can personally endorse a Democrat.
Yeah, we cool.
Yeah. So I was even when I was out helping for Geoff in the congressional race, I would notice just crazy stunts. Like, so they let us, they let everybody show up at the freshman UK thing. The
Organizational campus.
The campus ruckus thing, which is cool. They let us show up, right? Well, I shouldn't say. Everybody says you shouldn't say let us. Okay, I mean, it was great. All it was a forum. Okay, I have no qualms with that. And there was a bunch of us there. There was Young Freedom for America, all these other people, right? But they wouldn't admit that Geoff was on the ballot in their congressional district. But their Twitter was out putting out, go campaign for the D5 person or the D4 person. And I found this absolutely hilarious, because college kids at UK ain't going to drive out to D5 or D4 to campaign for somebody. So it's just stunts like that were just absolutely, like, it's so obviously transparent that it's hilarious to you think they would at least try a little harder to not be quite so transparent.
At this point, I'm using it. Look, if there's one thing Obama made clear to the world, it's that if somebody is always going to punch you, you can just use that. You can just attach a dynamo to their punching arm and go, oh, now I'm here. Now I'm here. It's like I spent $20 to fly a balloon over the Kentucky Democratic Party, and they had to spend $2.7 million to shoot it down.
Exactly.
Andy Bashir went to Andy Bashir on Valentine's Day. Andy, if you show up, you can give your own side of this. Went to Clark County the day before the Zoom meeting to select the nominee, and tweeted about how he was glad that Russia hated him. And then donated $2.7 million to Clark County, complete with a giant oversized novelty check.
Well, it was some kind of contract, right?
Yeah, it was,
the state government regular contract.
It was a heck of a coincidence.
It's not a donation.
No, it was a contract.
To be precise,
we should be precise, but the point is that
yes.
$2.7 million went to my county.
yeah,
Out of nowhere.
Out of
appeared
nowhere.
out of the sky just so
Yeah.
that you wouldn't win that election. Yes.
Which saved me the trouble of running. As far as I'm concerned, this is a win-win situation, and as many times as we want to play this game, I'm happy to. But this is ridiculous, y'all. This is just
Well, you
utterly
won money
ridiculous.
for your county. It's kind of like we joke about this too in the LP. I always say, I am not, because we make the jokes about whether or not people are being bought or can be bought. And I said, I'm not saying that nobody has their price. It's just mine's a lot higher than other people settled for before.
Oh my gosh. Okay, we're going on. So, ma'am.
What? Say something nice about the state
Yeah, let's start with
government.
saying something
say
nice
something
about the
nice
Kentucky government.
about the Kentucky government.
Well, getting back to the theme of our history, I think Kentucky government has had a rich history, and it has a rich future, and that's what we all strive for, is that we can help guide all Kentuckians who are busy working, doing something that they're good at, hopefully, and that they enjoy, to a more prosperous future. And that's where I see legalizing marijuana and casino gaming playing a large role. Because if it's run by the state, the money will dump into the state treasury, hopefully will overcome the income tax, so that the legislature does not have to tax everything else in order to make up for getting rid of the income tax. Why is that so important? Because we cannot expect companies to move to Kentucky and set up shop and hopefully get corporate headquarters come in here until this is the new fad. Their executives do not want to pay an income tax on their salaries and their bonuses and everything. And the fad is to take their corporations somewhere where they don't have to pay an income tax. And so if Kentucky is going to be competitive, even with Tennessee, I used to think we were all, we used to look down our noses at Tennessee, but Tennessee is eating our lunch economically because they don't have an income tax. And business is flowing in there as well as to Florida and other southern states. Kentucky we have the opportunities for corporations to move in here. After all, we've lost three of our biggest, and that's Humana and Yum Brands and Humana and Papa John's. And they've moved out because their younger executives don't want to pay that income tax. Now, the way the legislature is going, reducing it so much every year, we'll be 8 years out, still waiting to get rid of the income tax. I can build 2 casinos, one in Louisville, one here in Lexington, and be up and running and overcoming the income tax in 2 years, not 8. So this is really a watershed election. Listen up, folks. You can help me determine where the state really owns property, state property here in Fayette County. The horse park comes to mind. I don't know where else we might put a casino, but we can build it. I've worked with contractors in the past from here in Fayette County and have a design of what I think it will look like, which will be ecologically interesting and not big and flashy. It will be more Kentucky style. And where I want to put it in Louisville is on the state property that we own, where the old Executive Inn was, across from the fairgrounds, and wedged in between the airport and the fairgrounds, because nearly everybody in Kentucky knows how to get to the fairgrounds in Louisville. And there'd be no parking, no gates to have to pay to get into, and I would hope we can achieve that over here as well. That way, the legislature will not have to raise the sales tax, which I would find, I heard McConnell speak about a consumption tax, but that's really what it is, to be raising the sales tax. And that falls on
the poor
all
are
of
very
us.
upset about that, by the way.
That would be very counterproductive to our lessening people on welfare and entitlement programs to get them to go to work and better education and all of the good things that prosperity will bring. To raise the sales tax falls on everybody.
Oh my God, yeah.
And
Okay, so before we,
Well, Geoff, do you have to do a station break or something?
I do actually in 1 second. So we'll finish this up real fast. So
Yep.
before we are going to move to corruption, but I just have to ask, and this is not a gotcha. This is an honest question. Would you describe this as socialized gambling?
Oh, here we go.
It's not. I mean, everybody has their own opinion here. He's a socialist. He's a libertarian. So you're not going to please both of them with this.
I think
You don't
it's-
need to please me. I'm okay.
I think
Yeah, we're
it's
cool.
purely capitalistic.
Yeah.
It is, it's just about making some money for the state and being able to overcome some of our issues and then reinvesting it in some energy that I want to speak about when we come back from the break.
Okay, I'm going to press the IDB, but before I go, in your opinion, is this socialized gambling?
I don't see how we could not call it that. I will say, though, however, I would also say just turning around and giving the casino license to Churchill Downs is also socialized
That's
gambling.
the bad kind of socialism.
So
Yeah.
this is slightly better than that, but that's still, I mean, we would like to, as a Libertarian Party, we of course would like to see just anybody bid on being able to run gambling to whatever degree they want. in their
Last
life.
question before the station break. Mr. Young, in your opinion, is that socialized gambling?
Well, speaking as the only socialist in the room, I don't think so, because it's not gambling is not a commanding height of the economy like banking, oil industry, automobile manufacturing, defense industry. Those are the commanding heights, especially banking. A casino is not that.
All right. Okay, well, we'll be back in 30 seconds after these recorded voices.
You're listening to WRFL Lexington.
The following program contains views, ideas, and opinions that have been produced by the host DJ and their guests and are not reflective of the views of WRFL or its underwriters. For questions, comments, or concerns, please email programming@wrfl.fm.
Okay.
So during the break, the Libertarian Party chair just admitted that he's from Wisconsin. Sir, how do you respond to these charges?
Guilty as charged. I grew up there. I go back once a year to a cabin by where my family lives, and I was born in Milwaukee. So I'm very excited for how well the Bucks have been playing the last couple of years.
Yeah.
And Milwaukee's new mayor, I actually kind of like a little bit. His politics are a bit different than mine, but he's from the streets, and he's African American. He's from the streets, and his name's Cavalier Johnson. And he said he will work with anybody. He will work with anybody to make Milwaukee better. And Lord knows Milwaukee needs the help.
Okay, we're getting to corruption in 30 seconds here.
Yeah.
But, the establishment has gotten so ridiculous and so closed in and so incestuous that there's coalitions forming everywhere, and people are admitting everywhere, I don't have a problem with Republicans. I disagree with them sometimes. It's not the world's biggest deal. Right. And I have to say that things are getting so bad in Washington that I turned on the TV the other day, or I think it was yesterday, and I saw Bernie Sanders and Rand Paul sitting next to each other and agreeing with each other. And I was like, oh my God, my time has come. All my friends are going to be so angry at me. So, corruption. Is it bad?
Well, corruption, of course, can cripple a state or a country. And there are 3 or 4 branches of government. I said earlier that I think our executive branch, all the cabinets, are relatively the least corrupt out of the 4. Going on from there.
Wait, executive, judicial, legislative, and what's the fourth?
The fourth estate, the media.
Oh,
the
gosh.
mass media.
Yeah, sorry, guys. Sorry, Austin. Sorry, Joe. You're very pleasant people, but it's not going well.
I think the next most corrupt, next to the legislature, is next to the executive branch is the legislature. They're, they've got people watching them also. I think much more corrupt than either of those two is our judges.
Yeah.
And I learned that between 2015 and today. The last 8 years, I have been, as a non-attorney, I've been filing lawsuits against the Kentucky Democratic Party, and then in 2020, the Republican Party of Kentucky. And I have never gotten to the discovery stage of any of my lawsuits. They have all been thrown out. And in general...
Could you take a second to talk about why that's significant in case people don't know what the discovery stage is?
Oh, discovery is where you get to ask questions of all the defendants and other witnesses.
And it goes into the record, the public record.
Yeah. And I think especially the Democrats are terrified of that ever happening. That would be like doomsday to them if I'm allowed to conduct discovery and ask them questions about how they really run their party. They might as well just leave the state.
I agree, Geoff. May I butt in? And
Yeah,
say
feel free to
something?
butt in, yeah.
Well, our allegiance to sovereign immunity is counterproductive to life in Kentucky. I have also filed several suits against state government.
Thank you for your service.
And I wouldn't have wasted my time. I mean, they weren't a waste of time. I think they had, some legitimacy. But this whole concept, and for those who may not know what I'm referring in sovereign immunity, it means the old English term, you cannot sue the king, which means that you cannot succeed in suing the government. And you can sue the federal government, you just can't sue here in Kentucky. And I do think that we should take a hard look at getting rid of sovereign immunity. I'll give you a good example. The flooding in eastern Kentucky back in July was so unnecessary, and I feel that is one of the worst things that Andy Beshear has done, and that is, while he was doing all of his little COVID shows and putting up a fence around the mansion and barricading the road that goes past the governor's office, which is still barricaded.
Yeah.
All that he spent really for the first year and a half that he was governor. And in that time, the Kentucky River was getting more narrow and more shallow and filling up with more debris. And when Andy Beshear refers to that flooding last year that dislocated so many of my friends in eastern Kentucky who voted for me in '99 against one of their own, a coal operator from Letcher and Pike County in Paul Patton. Those 45 families that lost people have a wrongful death suit against Andy Beshear for negligence in not dredging out the Kentucky River. Now, that's not something you can do in a week. I understand that. But it is something that they're still not doing. And the flood, it was not historic rain. It was simply historic flooding because the river had built up so. And I can't represent those wonderful families, but somebody really should try. And unfortunately, this sovereign immunity will probably fly in their way. But that would be a legitimate effort.
That would be very... What do you think, Mr. Young?
Well, there's a lot to talk about there, but...
you have 52 minutes.
I want to give one example of judicial corruption. I do want to get back to the flooding. That's an important issue. So I'll give you one example is in 2020, I was a Republican into that whole year and a few months before and a few months after. Ran in the primary against Andy Barr as a Republican. He had one other Republican opponent, Chuck Eddy. And
I forgot about
is
Chuck.
that right?
Hi, Chuck.
Yeah, I forgot about
It
Chuck.
was Chuck, right?
Yeah,
It's Chuck.
Yeah, okay.
Because you have him as a co-defendant in one of the suits, and he's really upset about that.
He doesn't want to be seen on the same sheet of paper.
I just had him as, I mentioned his name.
Yeah.
He was never a defendant.
Oh,
I've never sued Chuck.
No, I'm sorry. I misspoke myself. Obviously, you didn't sue him. It's you were co-complainant, I guess, is what. It doesn't matter. You listed him in one of the suits, is what I'm trying to say.
I mentioned his name because of an incident.
Yeah, it was the same incident at the Clark County Republican Party, the one that they kicked me out of.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right. So I had all these examples, these incidents where the various divisions of the Republican Party had not allowed me to speak to a county party or to the entire party or the anywhere in the 6th district. Not allowed to debate Andy Barr. He was the keynote speaker at several events, and I wasn't allowed to have the same number of minutes as he had. And then KET got involved and also rigged it. Anyway, I had all these well-organized, well-thought-out allegations. I put them all in the complaint. It took the form of a ballot challenge. There's a statute in Kentucky that says if a candidate does not run for the nomination in the primary according to law, they may be challenged by any member of their party. Didn't have to be me, the opponent.
Yeah.
Any Republican could have challenged him if they thought he was not proceeding according to law. And I mentioned before that there's a law that the party leadership may not rig their own primary. So I put this together and I said these 5 incidents show that Andy Barr is part of a conspiracy that with the leadership, he is part of the leadership himself, rigging this primary. It's against the law. Here's the statute. And it went to the Fayette Circuit Court. Ernesto Scorsoni was the judge. And I have respected him for many years.
Yeah.
And this is what he said at the first motion hour. Well, I filed this, and all the Barr's lawyers file a motion to dismiss my ballot challenge. So first hearing, Judge Scorsoni says, well, I think their lawyer might be right because all these previous ballot challenges that I have judged, the issue was always something like, were there enough verified proper signatures on the petition to get the candidate on the ballot. And Mr. Barr's, Representative Barr's lawyer is saying that that's what the law really means. That's the kind of thing that you can file a ballot challenge over. And I may be wrong, Judge Scorsoni said, meaning that he was going to rule against me and I would have to go to the Court of Appeals, right?
Yeah.
Whenever a judge says,
I may be wrong.
You may need
Not
to
really
appeal.
what you wanna hear from a judge,
Whenever a judge says, you may need to deal with the Court of Appeals on this, I know that I'm about to get screwed.
Right.
And you will again in the Court of Appeals.
Right. But I think that, you've accused him of election rigging and violating this other thing. But I think the law really means they don't have enough signatures.
But
I would argue that is a large part of the law, but my understanding is there is an equal airtime thing, and that's why they kicked Matt Jones off of television and radio.
All right, so the statute says, again, the ballot challenge statute says, if the candidate has not run for the nomination according to law, it doesn't say anything about signatures, or it doesn't say anything about being a resident of the district for long enough, any of that stuff, which is usually where these cases come up.
Yeah.
But but that's not in there. Yeah. If I accuse Barr of rigging the entire election, which has got to be a felony, right? I mean, stealing a few votes is a felony. Mm-hmm. Forging a few ballots.
Yeah, there's people in jail for that right now. No joke.
Right. You get jail time. So stealing an entire primary election was not enough. All right. It was not enough to, in the judge's mind, to bring this law into action. And so he threw it out. And I immediately filed a motion to reconsider, Mm-hmm. And he just came back with the same sentence. This is not the kind of thing that is envisioned by the statute. And so, I had 5 days to go to the Court of Appeals. I made that deadline, and they said, well, the trial court judge has found that the statute doesn't apply. And that's all they said. They just stopped right there.
That's to the Court of Appeals.
The Court of Appeals did not evaluate whether Judge Scorsoni's decision was good or poor. And that's what the Court of Appeals always does to me.
Well,
they say, here's what the trial court judge
said.
Supreme
Court judge has her hands full, I'll tell you. There's a lot of corruption.
Yeah.
And nobody ever,
I went to the Kentucky Supreme Court and said, look, the Court of Appeals didn't even assess the validity of the trial court's order, and they just said, no, we're not even going to review it.
Yeah, read between the lines. We said no.
And I went to the Supreme Court of the United States,
and
I got a one-sentence. All this took, more than a year, this whole process. By that time, Barr was already in Washington again, back at his desk.
It's Kafkaesque, quite literally. What were you going to say, Peppy?
That is what I mean by corruption.
He's absolutely right.
I'm curious on your response on some judges, because obviously we've had our experiences within the Libertarian Party. We had to get them to. They tried to throw us off the ballot by the legislature by retroactively changing their deadline one time. Oh, yeah. And then we had to get that thrown out in federal court.
Yeah, that was dreadful.
Congratulations on getting something reversed.
Yeah, well, really. It was so cut and dried. It was like, we changed the deadline just so the Libertarian Party couldn't meet it, even though they had already previously met it, but we changed it. So, that it was a slam dunk for that. I don't know how they would have been able to rule a different way.
Well, it's exactly like that. That's how they rule a different way, by refusing. And it's like, I know Scorsone by reputation, and it's a good reputation, and honestly, it seems to me like he didn't retaliate against you, which makes him better than a lot of the other judges you've run into.
I guess my question
but we are interrupting Ms. Martin.
So the main question I was going to go circle back to is, what do you think? How do you think you put the judiciary in check? We this isn't just one judge here. No. It's a constant problem. It's like people were. Shepard was doing a lot of questionable things, in my opinion, in the last couple of years. And
getting rid of that sovereign immunity would help because the judiciary hides behind it.
Yeah.
You go to sue even the circuit clerk. Yeah. Anybody associated with the court. Oh, That's sovereign immunity. Goodbye. It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
All right, I have some ideas also.
Please.
In
Go ahead.
addition to the sovereign immunity issue, impeachment.
Yeah.
The legislature can impeach these judges if they're shown to be corrupt. And 2, we've got a Judicial Conduct Commission.
Yeah, well, good luck with that.
Good luck with that.
Although I've
Well, that's the
tried-
problem. These things are supposed to
I've
work.
tried to deal with them many times,
They
and
got a box number somewhere.
yeah, right. They won't even return phone calls.
No.
Yeah.
And 3 is the Kentucky Bar Association.
Oh, that,
To
good luck
discipline-
with that.
she said good luck with
As
that.
long as they pay their dues, they're good. with
Well,
the
that's right.
Bar.
So the entire judicial branch in Kentucky and probably most other states is
2/3 of it's corrupt.
Yeah.
2/3.
Yeah.
2/3 of the states or 2/3 of.
2/3 of our judiciary.
Yeah, I was going for a higher number.
Well, that's the thing is like you're talking about like 100% of the judges will, when pushed in the particular direction that you push them, give a corrupt decision. That doesn't affect everything
Yeah,
else
and
they do.
have we
But on
le-
that issue, it's 100%.
Have
Right.
we given them party status yet? I know that's been talked about.
No, they're still
No,
nonpartisan.
No, they're still nonpartisan.
Do you think they should?
No.
Okay, I'm with you on that one.
I don't think they should be elected.
No, but it has struck me many times that the kind of person that that is good at running for office and the kind of person that is good at knowing the law are two entirely
different.
different people.
That's the thing that kind of blows my mind about that. I will say I was somewhat pleasantly surprised. I'm not saying that there isn't corrupt rulings in Wisconsin, but I did like the way the Wisconsin Supreme Court handled itself the last 2 years. They were
Good.
They were very thorough. They went out line by line with the law and responded to all the comments with the lockdowns, with the other things.
Yeah,
They
but
were,
in Kentucky, the individual has about a 3% chance of getting to the Supreme
right,
Court.
yeah, and that's what
Our
they're counting
Supreme Court, as it's set up right now, which I think is too narrow, and I'd like to talk with the new Supreme Justice on this. Isn't her name Hughes? Miss Hughes from Louisville. Is that they're a criminal court, and anything political or individual gripe is at discretion only, and only of all the discretionary requests are about 3% granted.
Right.
So while we've got supposedly some of the best public minds, at least, on public law in this state, sitting as a criminal review court, I don't understand. That's the way it was set up, and I think it's it should be broader than that.
Well,
I will say from my experience, like I'm saying, it feels like the judiciary in general here just doesn't care about average people very much. Like
the groupthink is just baffling.
there's numerous examples we can point to. Like there was that judge in Kenton County who was getting the
that guy.
strange, and then there was that other judge out in Owensboro. Wasn't she like covering for her son or something?
Oh yeah, and the one who was having an orgy.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was funny.
And then, of course, you told me about that one time in Clark County where they were trying to prosecute that guy and they had no evidence and they locked him up for a while.
Oh
and
yeah,
that-
for 2 years. Yeah,
Yeah.
good old Clark County.
As governor, I would not mind pushing for higher pay for our judges. They all want higher pay.
Yeah.
But we gotta have some better screening of the judges. The problem is that the folks who really are good lawyers don't want to be judges. They can't
Absolutely.
afford it.
Yeah.
It's only some person who's should be retired anyway, who's a judge or circuit judge, and a very few others who are have a different agenda of sitting on the high court or something. But the average circuit judge in this state, which is what the governor would be dealing with, is and not district judges, but the average circuit judge is I think we need better standards. I don't mind paying them more, but we got to attract have better standards.
How do you have better standards when you have an electoral system where the people are choosing them?
Well,
How do
you
you-
have
that
to
is the
meet
standard.
even to run for governor. You
Hey,
have
now
to
don't
meet
get
certain
the
standards.
edgy people from my side in on that one.
Oh, the phone's ringing.
I told people they could call in today. It didn't happen, though, thankfully.
They might be writing me on Twitter, and I'm just not reading. Sorry,
I've been
y'all.
checking my feeds to see if anybody had comments. No,
Terrible.
I'm sorry.
And
Go
we are
ahead.
interrupting it. Well, actually, no, because I think you were done. So,
Yeah,
Geoff,
I'm
We
finished.
go back to
As
the
governor,
flooding in,
I think
in
it's-
eastern Kentucky.
okay.
Yeah.
Whoa.
I think a major.
Jeff's microphone just jumped here, everybody. There we
yeah,
go.
It was excited.
It was fleeing. It was running away from him.
Yeah.
It knew I was going
All right.
to interrupt.
So I think the floods in eastern Kentucky were made much worse by strip mining, mountaintop removal mining, where they remove all the trees.
Yep.
They might use them, or for lumber, or they might shove them into the valley.
Or they might let them run into the Kentucky River, which silted
Yeah,
up from this
or-
debris. You all are talking about the same problem.
Same
Like
problem.
what
That's
what
right.
filled up the
But-
Kentucky River is what you're talking about.
But it needed to be, it needed to be dredged out back when Steve Beshear was governor. I mean, it has not been an overnight problem.
Right.
But Andy
Exactly.
wasted almost 2 years of his governorship doing nothing that helped anybody in Kentucky, really.
Right.
Whoa.
But okay,
takes
It's
So-
always
so-
weird when I'm the biggest Andy Beshear fan in a room.
I haven't made that many disparaging comments about our governor yet in this.
Yeah.
That's just because you've got two other people that are talking.
But while we're on Eastern Kentucky, if I may pick that up,
Yes.
I would very much, as governor, like to take some of our casino income. I don't want a mandate. I don't like mandates. I don't want to say what it has to go to. But if we have some money, I do think that there's an opportunity for Kentucky to look again to our past, not such a distant past as the 1600s, but the importance that coal and our energy reputation has been to our state. And we're down right now in coal, and I believe we could build 2 coal liquefaction plants, say one in Harlan or Perry County, and then one up in Martin County and the northern part of the area, the coal-producing area.
The
And-
eastern coal beds.
Right, and of the eastern Kentucky coal. And burn coal cleaner, but burn it to make gray hydrogen. The Democrats tend to be interested in green energy, and I did want to say something today about energy. We can burn our coal. We will make gray hydrogen because it will come from fossil fuel. We have a huge natural gas pool under the state of Kentucky that we're blessed with, that we can burn natural gas. And in my view, batteries are not the future of our state. It's a bridge at best. That hydrogen is the fuel of the future. And there'll be a couple of steps then to turn gray hydrogen to green. But what we should be aiming for is to partner with Marathon and Thornton's and Super America, which the pumps are owned by 7-Eleven now, and have, in addition to gasoline and diesel, that we have hydrogen pumps. And therein lies the infrastructure for hydrogen to run anything that needs energy in the whole Midwest and the Eastern Coast. I think Kentucky can play a very large role in this because of the natural gifts that we have. And I want my friends in Eastern Kentucky to know that I have not forgotten about the importance that coal and the role that coal has and will play in our future.
All right. Well, Peppy, that's one issue where I think we disagree. I spent my professional career in the Energy and Environment Cabinet, as most of that time as Assistant Director of the State Energy Office.
Yeah, and the
what-
National Energy recognizes hydrogen.
I know. What I learned in Frankfurt at the state energy office was that energy efficiency, reducing waste in all sectors of the economy, is the quickest, cheapest, most reliable way of meeting the gap between our energy needs and our energy supplies.
Geoff, how much waste are all these batteries going to be when they go in our landfills? That battery plant in Glendale is...
I know, I'm not a big fan of batteries either. Energy efficiency means weatherization programs. The community action agencies all over Kentucky for decades have been helping to improve insulation and air tightness in the homes of low-income Kentuckians. I think that should be expanded to help Kentuckians of all income levels improve
I don't disagree with that.
Their energy
better
efficiency.
Insulation is
right. And
our casinos
heating
will be naturally insulated.
Right. So there are it's been known across the country. I think the knowledge of energy efficiency's potential has been slow to come to Kentucky. I think it was Mark Twain who said that if the world ends, he wants to be in Kentucky because everything comes 20 years later here.
Well, my idea about gray hydrogen and turning it to green will put us in the forefront. I think we can. There is green hydrogen being sold at the pump in L.A. And our friends.
What makes it green? Is it from photovoltaics or wind power? The initial energy source determines, and I respect
No,
your...
not necessarily.
Yeah, it does. I respect your willingness to say that it's gray hydrogen.
Let me finish. We take our gray hydrogen that we burn here in Kentucky, that we make. We take our gray hydrogen and we build through the entrepreneurs in Kentucky. We can build floating platforms in the Gulf, and our gray hydrogen will be run to pump brine. Brine and electricity makes green hydrogen, and that is the ultimate. And
I'm really so glad everybody's interested in this. Can I say one thing about that?
There's no shortage of brine, Peppy.
Yeah, it just
that's everywhere.
I find
it's not in Kentucky.
What I find very interesting about what you're saying is that there is a unspoken acceptance of something that Miss Countryham Kelly Craft doesn't get, which is that rocks are heavy and coal is rocks, and they're behind a mountain, so getting them out of there is a problem. So
and
what you want to do
them.
is essentially
I just want to
you
burn
want to
it
burn
right
them there. Yeah.
But I want to.
So you're essentially talking about natural gas. You're talking not a form of natural gas.
Natural gas and the coal.
Yeah.
There's a coal liquefaction plant that's been approved and built in Rockport, Indiana. But knowing where our coal is in southeastern Kentucky, there's no river that goes. We can't. The Ohio River. You can't ship it to Rockport. It'd be cost prohibitive.
Absolutely. All I'm saying is that when you talk about what you're talking about with coal liquefaction is actually natural gas with an extra step.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
I would call it dirty energy.
No,
well, that's because we don't like.
We just take
dirty.
that and we run the generators that will pump brine from the ocean, and the ocean water, the brine and electricity make green energy.
Oh, they certainly do.
And we can pump that. And yes,
no,
it does.
green is okay. This is the problem because we all actually know what we're talking about right now.
I'd be careful using that word green.
Well, that's the problem. Yeah, I mean, it is better for the environment. It is more sustainable.
All these arguments are more sustainable arguments. Yeah. Some are just more extreme than other arguments.
It's all ways of getting to it.
Yeah.
Okay, and in answer to what you're saying about it being. I understand. I agree. Coal is fundamentally very dirty technology. Do you believe that we can have a coal liquefaction plant that does not have outsized emissions?
Well, I would hope we can.
Yeah.
Yes, I don't want to
There's-
poison the very
Oh,
people
no, we're
that
all
are
on the same-
mining the
that-
coal.
We're all very much on the same page here.
There's environmental destruction at every single stage
Yeah.
of the coal
There is that.
utilization.
There is that.
process.
But I'm telling you, folks, this $450 billion that Andy just threw at the Chinese government, that the legislature gave him
Yeah.
to throw to a Chinese company.
Oh, is this
to-
the battery
It's
manufacturer?
the battery deal. Yeah, the battery
Doesn't he know that we're at
manufacturing.
war with East Asia?
Apparently, none of them paid any attention to it.
Andy, we've always been at war with East Asia.
The
Okay, so
Chinese are going to hit this market. I don't care what anybody
Right.
says.
Yeah.
I agree
Right.
with that.
The Chinese
They're
are
gonna
coming
get
in
it.
here with hydrogen cars. They're going to be smaller than this console that we're sitting around.
Yeah.
They're go-
You think hydrogen, really?
their
Are
hydrogen.
they doing that yet?
Their hydrogen. Oh yeah, they've made them.
Really?
They've just conned all of our American car companies, except for Toyota, into converting everything to these stupid batteries. And they're going to
We agree on that.
They're going to come marching in here in a matter of months. I mean, it may be 30 months or 40 months. I don't know what. And they
you're
don't
right.
have coal.
Yeah, you're right.
The Chinese have natural gas, and they're making their hydrogen. Well, that's gray hydrogen. They're not pumping it. It's going to come in cartridges. And when the cartridge is empty, I guess it too goes in our landfill. But
I think they refill it. I would hope so, at least.
with what? Where?
Hydrogen, right?
Well, where are they going to? I'm talking about hydrogen
ship
at the
them
pump.
back to the
To the pump.
terminal.
Yeah.
Our friends at Toyota have a little car. They've had it for at least
Yeah, I just looked it up.
a
There's a
dozen
Toyota
years.
Mirai, it says.
Mirai.
Mirai.
I think it's it can drive around L.A. And when you buy
Well, we need a
one-
Kentucky pronunciation for it. I want to call it a Mirai.
They know there are 6 to 10 pumps around LA. That's as far a radius as they can go. The goal here is and the only reason why there aren't more pumps is because the infrastructure, and I'm saying that we can build and contribute to the infrastructure for the Midwest and the East Coast, because our Catlettsburg refinery supplies all the way to Florida. You know, we already have partners right here in Kentucky that have stations all the way. There's Super Americas in Florida. There's
Yeah, no. I mean, this is far better thought out than I thought it was. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'm glad there's a lot of thought into it.
Well,
and I
I'm
think
not a scientist, but I know a man who is a physicist, and of course we have physicists in Kentucky.
Oh, yeah. Big shout out to the University of Kentucky
Yeah, sure.
Chemistry and Physics
Sure,
departments.
but this guy knows how to make things really simple, and so I could understand by talking with him
right.
what he was telling me, and he keeps harping on me that it takes a lot of electricity to make hydrogen.
Exactly.
Got it.
right.
So,
If I might just step back, go big picture here, what I think you've sketched out here really effectively in a fairly short time is a vision for Kentucky's future energy system. I want to sketch out a big picture, my vision, for the way Kentucky should be going.
Oh, please do.
It's based on an assumption that U.S. foreign policy has been so suicidal and hostile and self-destructive that we are soon going to become
Pariahs.
we're soon going to enter another Great Depression. And my vision depends on Kentuckians' centuries-long resourcefulness, ability to deal with tough situations, and to survive by working together. That's the future of Kentucky that I see, to deal with a Great Depression that I think is going to be worse than the one 90 years ago in the 1930s, when the rest of the world decides they don't need our dollars, we don't need to export anything to the... Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. Young used an inappropriate word. Please continue, though. So when the rest of the world decides that they are tired of buying American guns and selling American...
When America sinks into the deepest, worst depression that we've ever experienced, because other countries want to deal with us.
Yeah.
Except maybe Canada, you know.
Even Mexico's getting pretty annoyed with us.
Right. We are going to have to convert Kentucky into a resilient economy. I want to promote a state bank like North Dakota has had for a century or something. Long time. We need a Kentucky state bank which would fund not huge corporations like Chinese battery plant, but small businesses, medium-sized businesses here in Kentucky that will be producing things for this area, this region, that are necessities that people will need to live, fertilizer for farmers to grow crops.
Yeah.
I'm foreseeing a complete collapse of our country's financial banking system, the large banks. But
that's apocalyptic, but fairly reasonable, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah. I mean, the Federal Reserve has been making bad decisions for decades now. I see Wall Street collapsing. And every state is going to have to deal with how to keep people fed, clothed, and housed when we're not doing international trade anymore. So that's my vision for Kentucky.
That sounds pretty socialistic.
Well, he's a socialist.
He is a socialist.
Socialism may be necessary.
I'm much more for the entrepreneur.
You're a capitalist. Let me see if I got this right.
Absolutely
You're a capitalist,
capitalist.
you're a libertarian, you're a socialist, and I'm an economic atheist, right?
I think we're well represented here at the round table.
I feel like we've... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
My only... I think, like I said, I don't necessarily think any alternative energy ideas are bad. I think from the practicality standpoint for me, I drive to Wisconsin once a year. I take my wife and kids, and it's an 8-hour drive. There's still not an electric car that would make that drive easy for me.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's the plain and simple of it for me. I don't really... I will say this. I would like to, at some point, I think I want to put solar panels in my backyard.
Yeah.
I would like to have other energy sources than KU, because I don't entirely trust KU. No offense to them. I don't... They're not the worst power supplier in the country.
They're nice people. Everybody's nice people.
But
everybody means well.
I just would like another source of power when there's issues in my backyard.
Oh, you mean like when the wind blew a little hard and Lexington lost all power for
Yeah, and
a week?
I was the fortunate one. I did not lose power that entire time. I was lucky. I mean, literally neighbors across the street were out for 5 days, and I did not.
Jeff, weren't you out for 6 days?
6 days.
6 days.
But
lunacy. Absolute lunacy.
So that's where I sort of fall on it.
The power went on, and then it was out for another day after that.
So, I mean, I do think some of what Peppy's saying sounds like we could get more to a future, but I also do think it is... it is kind of experimental, and the question is who will fund the experimentation.
I was interested.
China. Yes, they've already experimented
China,
and funded
it's all
it.
in on hydrogen. I got to tell you.
No, that's interesting.
Yes,
I wasn't aware.
Absolutely.
But the question is China also heading for a collapse too?
I know. I think they're not.
Our friends.
Yeah, I'm with you on this one. I always wonder, because it's hard to tell, because we live in one of the most propagandized cultures in the world, and it's really hard to tell what's going on outside of it.
Yeah.
But
Right.
at this point, I take everything I hear about China with a serious grain of salt.
Our friends at Toyota are working on a package of some sort, and I hope it includes heavy equipment as well, which of course we know runs on diesel. But they are working, they've already got this Mirai, that I mentioned.
Oh, the me ray.
That runs on hydrogen.
Yeah.
What they're working on now is a package to a conversion package to where if you really love the car you've got and it's gasoline, they can convert it to run on hydrogen.
No way.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
And that is a big deal.
Yeah, that's no small feat.
And I'm hoping that the package will, as I say, include something for diesel-operated vehicles, because it isn't until our diesel trucks and Caterpillar, heavy equipment and the real heavy stuff that operates can get off of diesel or have a choice. I don't want to replace it as much as just have the opportunity, because hydrogen burns a third hotter than gasoline, and in doing so buys you a lot more mileage.
Oh, hydrogen burns. The problem with hydrogen is it burns.
You ought to be able to drive from here to Wisconsin on a tank of hydrogen.
The problem is what to do if the car catches on fire. And that is a problem that electric cars have too, and we're just shoving under the bed. And this lithium plant has me worried, to be put it mildly. Okay, so...
but no, it's a great discussion.
But we were talking about small business. Geoff, you just mentioned small business.
Yeah.
And I do want to mention to all those who are perhaps losing their gray gambling machines based on what the legislature just ruled, that in my promotion card, I have casino gambling run by the state, but I would like the state to issue licenses for small business to have slots, so that if you have a bowling alley in Paducah or a large restaurant in Hazard, you can apply for a license and have some slot machines. Doesn't have to be a bar. It could be a bar here in Lexington. It could be a laundromat, for that matter. It's just places where you want to keep people longer and entertain them, so they'll spend more money at your place.
Would that require a constitutional amendment?
Well, what, the casino gambling?
No, any kind of gambling.
Well, that's why I mentioned the Supreme Court. I'm prepared. I don't know at this point if I make my historical background pitch that the legislature will not pass it, but I'm not going to be deterred by any one of them. I'll tell you that. I'll sue them and take it right to the Supreme Court.
Of Kentucky or the U.S.?
No, our own Supreme Court.
Oh, okay, all right.
And they love, if I've learned one thing from being in the courts myself on suits that I've filed, they love historical evidence.
Really?
Yeah.
I guess my my question would be on this sort of stuff is, obviously we're sitting around rooms amongst friends. How big do you really think the anti-gambling moral outrage faction is in Kentucky?
I don't think it overcomes our heritage. They all came from somewhere else themselves.
Because I used to meet some of those people in my circles back in my college campus ministry days.
Really, anti-gambling ones?
Oh yes, I knew a lady. She was the daughter of a local campus minister sort, and she literally would. She would go out and, what is that group called? The whatever it is.
Family Foundation.
Yeah, the Family Foundation, whatever. And she'd write all these nasty editorials to the Kentucky.
I'm sure she's welcome to her opinion.
The people I know that are against, I'm a liberal, so the people I know are like, surely just a tax on being bad at math, isn't it? Well, yeah, okay, but shut up.
I am just curious. I don't know. I've never seen a poll on gambling.
Of course.
Yeah.
There's opposition.
We've got 11 minutes left, so I have one last thing that I really want to get both of you all on the record about, which is, and we'll start with Geoff, because I know how this guy feels, but what do you think about the Kentucky National Guard? We're agreed that when one of you is governor, the other will be lieutenant governor, so I want to know what you think or what your plans are with the Kentucky National Guard.
Yes, I think it should be restricted from ever being sent outside of the 50 states. It should have no military function. except unless, the U.S. is invaded, then I guess they could be converted into defense forces. But the Kentucky National Guard should never be sent to Iraq or Afghanistan or Ukraine or anywhere to fight in our illegal, unjust wars.
Okay,
there's an organization that is called, I found out recently, Defend the Guard. And that's their position. They're trying to get it accepted nationally or by all of the states.
And so I have two specific questions, then I'll ask you the exact same question. Do you agree with Beshear's decision to, 1, deploy the National Guard to Louisville in 2020, and 2, to deploy the National Guard to help in the Eastern Kentucky floods last year?
Well, the floods, definitely. That's what they're for.
Yeah.
They're for natural disasters. They're for, civil unrest or whatever. And tell me about Louisville.
That was a bit of a trick question. When Beshear deployed the National Guard to Louisville, that's when the barbecue guy got killed that night. That's how he got killed. What was it? Do you remember his name? The guy that ran the barbecue place in Louisville, the one that was famous for
David McAtee.
David McAtee, the one who was famous for feeding cops, and
Yes.
the National Guard killed him.
Yes, because he thought that there were people trying to fire in on his business, and
Which
he
they
ran
were.
out. Right.
He had no way of knowing that outside his door were National Guardsmen with automatic weapons.
It's just a terrible situation.
So
all
that
the
was
way
a trick
around.
question.
Yeah.
Okay, and Ms. Pat Martin?
The National Guard, I agree with Geoff, ought to stay in the state of Kentucky. I did not like the idea that the National Guard was sent to Washington, D.C. to protect anybody during the inauguration.
Yeah.
I didn't, and they stayed for weeks up there.
So your position is a little more radical than mine.
Well, my position is that law and order has got to come first, and I think periodically our governors in the past have sent the National Guard to help maintain order. Now, I was in Louisville in 2020, and I did not appreciate going to Cox Park, where I go often to feed the birds and 2 wild cats there, and enjoy the park, which is badly maintained. And I will be I'm already after the new mayor to step it up.
Yeah.
And when I'm governor, he'll hear from me more about making improvements to Cox Park.
You're on notice, Greenberg.
I showed up when it was supposed to be Derby weekend, and there were our National Guard standing every 5 or 6 feet throughout the entire park, and they were there because of some white group that was coming, many of whom, the whole park was filled with F-150s. So most of them were from Louisville or surrounding territories. They were local people. And there was the Guard facing them, and I left. I did not like that feeling.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on
Of course,
that one.
none of us like unrest. And
no, but the first time you see a soldier on the streets in America, it's a chilling
Kentucky,
experience.
It is. I can remember going to Greece on vacation in, I think it was 68, the summer of 69. And there were tanks rolling down the streets of Athens.
Yeah.
And I did not like that at all. And I don't like that here. I appreciate the Guard. But the Guard, those people all have jobs. They have families to feed. They have employers. And it takes a real problem to pull them, I should think. And I think Andy perhaps has overused them. But it would take a lot for me to call up the Guard and pull them out of their businesses because they are all employed.
Right, but a natural disaster,
Yeah.
the flooding.
Well, the problem with
Like
the problem
that.
with the flooding was that there were already too many of them deployed overseas,
Right.
and so they could only send 500 of the 8,000 National Guard. Sorry.
Do we really? I'm really curious where this trend started. Because you would think inherently something being called the National Guard would not leave the premises of the
Bush.
United States.
It was Bush. Bush
Like
was
this is
trying
just
to.
a so bizarre concept to me. I can't wrap my head around
We're
it.
still, and I don't mean to put him down if you like
Yeah.
the guy, but we're still dealing with the problems of Bush's rush to war in 2002 and
Because
2003.
it's just so bizarre to me. Like
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make sense on a
And
fundamental level.
If Andy had shown up and he was willing to be honest about it, I think he would agree that deploying them in 2020 was a terrible mistake. Did not work out. Did not work out for Louisville.
Well,
didn't work out for McAtee.
really
Didn't
was
work out for the LMPD.
The whole thing was just a bad scene, and a lot
Yeah.
of people were all mad in various ways. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, that all stems back to a choice we made as a state to allow, well, I should say that stems back to a choice that the Louisville Metropolitan Police Force made
Yeah.
to have these no-knock raids.
Yeah.
And they came into that situation hot with an officer, mind you, who was fired before from Lexington
that
for being
psychotic
being
freak.
being too
Yeah.
hot on the trigger.
Those
Yeah.
were literally the worst cops in literally the worst department. But we have 4 minutes left, so we're going to stop with that.
Yep.
And would you two like to make a closing statement or anything like that?
I just encourage everybody to vote on May 16th in the Democratic primary. Everybody's primary on the 16th. If you're a Democrat, please show up, because if you are not in favor of Andy's being reelected, that's your opportunity for moving forward. He will have his supporters there. I mean, they will show up. And so any challenger like Geoff or like I am needs to know that some other people are exercising their beliefs and would like a change.
We're
All
profoundly
right.
grateful for what you're doing. Seriously.
Right. Thank you for jumping in.
Yeah.
I'd like to say that Andy Bashir's total, irresponsible, reckless mismanagement of the response to COVID-19 will guarantee that if he is the nominee for the Democrats, the next governor is going to be a Republican. And the next 2 governors, the next 3 governors, we may see, he may be the last Democratic governor of any of our lifetimes if he's the nominee this year on May 16th. I think I can beat whichever immoral, woman-hating, a poor person-hating, people
Tell
of
us how you
color
really feel about the Republican field.
hating Republican out of the 12.
Trans-baiting.
There are 12 of them.
Yeah.
I think I can beat any one of the 12. On the other hand, I think any one of those 12 immoral, destructive Republicans can beat Andy Bashir in November. I'm convinced of that.
Something that we didn't really touch on that we really should have was that Bashir is the head of the KDP, and he does run the KDP, and the KDP has shrunk to nothing. And it isn't alarmist at all to say there may never be we are down to 30 Democrats statewide. There are 30 Democrats above the local level in this entire state right now.
In the House and Senate?
House and Senate and Andy, and counting Bashir. 30. I think maybe 31. It's either 30
That's
or 31.
pathetic.
It is pathetic. And you know what's really funny? Half of them hate you and the other half are okay with you. It's really funny. But the point is that Bashir has run the KDP, and whatever you think about his term as governor, and obviously I'm a bigger fan than anybody here, which is some weak tea, but I am. But he has run the KDP directly into the ground, and there is no further Democratic grassroots, and there are no candidates, and there is no support. And everybody knows it. It was on the front page of the Herald Leader. And the KDP has been reduced by his own decision, by his own choice, to the Andy Bashir show. And if we lose Andy Bashir, that's it. We're a one-party state. And I think that's disastrously unwise. Sorry,
Well,
Ms. Biden.
I do agree. There were a lot of Democratic parties by county, and activities back in '06 because I went to some. They were in the local elections prior to the governor's race. And it was the year before we had the Democrats had 9 candidates for governor, and Steve Beshear won. And now I've heard from one county.
If you don't mind me asking, which one?
Jessamine.
Yeah, Jessamine's still trying. Clark's still trying. Paducah, what are they? McCracken County, they're still trying. But I mean, it's to the point where I can name the counties that are still trying. There's not many.
No, and these were big events. I mean, they had 1,500, 2,000 people at the events. Yeah. And I applauded them, the Democrats, for having them in the fall or leading up to the fall to win the general election.
Right.
All the Republican events are leading up kind of to Derby, and then they just quit.
Yeah.
And whoever wins it helps the primary winner, whoever that is, but then there's no activity for the general, which is the prize.
Yeah.
And I always thought the Democrats had the better program. But now they don't have any.
It's just gone, yeah.
So to rebuild, I think, Geoff, either one of us as governor has got to commit to rebuild the party.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah, commit to the party. And I mean, I sincerely appreciate that as a member of the party, as rank and file of the party. It's disastrous. There's nothing. You're not imagining, you're not being left out. There is truly nothing. They do not support any candidate. They attack candidates that they don't like, and that is their only function at this point.
Well, I'm not on social media, so I don't hear all the negative.
Well, no, this is stuff they did to us
really
personally, but yeah.
No,
And I'll
it's a
say
matter
this-
of not
Go ahead.
being active. It's like the Kentucky Green Party. They don't do anything.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and I'll add this comment as the Libertarian chair. I think any political party gets itself in trouble as a state affiliate when they become too obsessed with the national party line and not enough with their local constituencies.
Yeah.
And that is something, as the Libertarian Party chair, I've been trying very hard to fight against, is to, and that's not to say I don't have any opinions on national things or that we don't ever talk about national issues, but I think most people would say who are members of the Libertarian Party of Kentucky that we do focus on the issues in Kentucky first before we focus on other issues.
Yeah, and that is completely lacking in the Kentucky Democratic Party, and the voters can sense it. The voters can absolutely tell.
I think that's what's really more demoralizing than anything. I bet you haven't even lost people on your side necessarily. They just don't feel any energy because they look and they see Andy talking about, I'm Russia's -- one enemy, and they're like,
Hello.
what does that have to do with
Is
my
that
bills?
your job? You're proud of that?
the
It's
most
like
ridiculous.
Kelly Craft talking about the border. I
Oh
mean,
my God.
Again,
And we should
who
be better than
cares?
that. Coleman Eldridge got so mad during the general election last year that he just went out, and he's the chair of the Kentucky Democratic Party. He's not elected, but whatever. New DJ?
I'm the next one.
Oh, well then. Sir, you may sit down, and I guess, Coleman, you're just going to have to wait to find out what I think about what you did last year, because let me
until
tell
next
you,
week.
I ain't happy.
He'll come back to it. Don't worry.
Oh, yeah. All right. Well, this has been Radio Free Eskipakathiki. I can't pronounce my own show's name. And we are with the gubernatorial candidates, Peppy Martin and Geoff Young. And I guess I was Andy Beshear's proxy or something. and Charles Altendorf, the chair of the LPKY. And this has been delightful, you all. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Okay, I'm going to play the promo, and then the next DJ is going to have about 30 seconds to figure out how to get some music in. Thanks, y'all.
Nice to meet you.
Oh, it's so great to meet you. I really.
You're listening to WRFL Lexington.